Hello. Hello and welcome to the first official race day recap hosted by yours truly. Today we're going to be discussing the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, or Grand Prix if you want to sound cultured, which was this past weekend. So let's just hop right into it. As you can see, we are in my car. Figured that was a fair setting to have a video about cars racing in circles. My beautiful 2010 Ford Escape is no match for any of these cars, but a rightful place to film a video in. Let's hop right in. This race was a doozy. This was a doozy, if I do say so myself. So let's just hop right into it. I have notes. That's what I'm looking at. Naughty minds. That's what I'm looking at. First on the list, Carlos Sainz, Ferrari's driver, who will be needing a place next year, but that's for a different story. During FP2, he was not feeling great, was having some stomach pains and just body aches, and he was honest about that on social media, that he wasn't feeling 100%. However, he pushed on, and all things considered, had a good result in FP2, placing P7. However, shortly thereafter, he was diagnosed with appendicitis, therefore removing his ability to race. So this left Ferrari to rely on their reserve driver, which we will get into later. So it was Carlos and the reserve driver against the, so it was Charles and their reserve driver against the world. Number 2 in this race was Yuki and the Lando incident from the very beginning, pre-race. Yuki Tsunoda was hit with a 5-second post-race penalty for nearly crashing into Lando Norris following an unsafe release from his garage before the race even began. Y'all didn't even get out on the track yet. Come on now. Lando, who had good pace in the pits, was forced to lock up as he slammed on his brakes. Pit message featured here. And yeah, so that was cool. FIA decided to give him a penalty, even though it was pre-race. But regardless, continuing with Lando, at the beginning of the race, he had a cheeky little false start. His reaction time was just a little bit too quick for the race. He caught himself and hit the brakes. And while in all technicality, he probably should have gotten a penalty from the FIA. They turned a blind eye. He did not. They did not penalize Norris. He braked quickly enough, I guess, and fell back into line and had a regular start. But George Russell, who was next to him on the grid, was quick to let his pit wall know what was going on. The next on the list of this race was Lance Stroll and his shenanigans, if you will. He sent it into the wall on lap 6 with many laps to go into the race. His Aston Martin caused a flag, which drastically switched the order of the racers, caused a lot of pit stops and such. However, what made this a newsworthy event was a moment when he reared an attitude towards his race engineer, as featured.
Hit the wall.
Okay, can you bring it back, Lance?
No, I'm in the wall.
Alright, copy that.
His engineer had not yet seen the video of the crash, and it just, went crazy. Next on the list, McLaren's other driver, Oscar Piastri, who was parked behind the back of British Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes for nearly 250 laps. I'm kidding, it was 25. 250 laps of the race. Count them. 2-5. And he was unable to get past him. And the crowning moment when Oscar was able to get past him was when Lewis was required to pit stop. And so we were all cheering, and then he went to the pit lane. So regardless, he made it back into 4th place ahead of Lewis Hamilton and was on the coattails of Charles Leclerc for the last however many laps of the race. Next on the list, Kevin Magnussen. What a demon he was this past weekend. Kevin got a 10-second penalty for sending Williams racer Alex Albon into the wall. Nearly. There was a little bit of some collision, but it was just a lot of tight racing, we'll just put it that way. So he received a 10-second penalty there. He then passed Yuki Tsunoda, bringing Yuki back into it, off track, which resulted in yet another 10-second penalty. If you're keeping track, that's 20 seconds of penalties. He then held up the entire midfield and defended like a god, maybe slightly illegally, and allowed his teammate Nico Hülkenberg to get P10 and score some points for the team. So K-Mag really took one for the team there, which was, what a saint. In other news, Sauber Kick F1 team is still having struggles with pit stops, only this time it wasn't Valtteri. Flashbacks from Bahrain. Zhou had a hellacious pit stop after managing a set of mediums for nearly the entire race, and was forced to just move on after their fun little pit stop. Last but not least, well, almost last but not least, the man of the hour, which I referenced at the beginning, and that is our Ferrari reserve driver. His name is Ali Behrman. Ali Behrman is an 18-year-old who races for the Ferrari Academy, the F2 Drivers Academy. He's 18 years old, and he was called up into FP3 in place of Carlos after he went to go get his appendix removed. He had spent about, 4.5 milliseconds in an F1 car prior to this, and then got thrown into P3, and all things considered did pretty well. And then got thrown into qualifying. They said, "Hey, brother, send it," and so he did. And he qualified P11 after essentially no time in a car whatsoever, beating out some very highly talented racers. So that was pretty impressive. What's even more impressive is it's one of, if not the hardest circuit of the year. He then finished P7 with huge points, launching him into the 10th place in driver standing. So he managed to pull out a 7th place finish after a very rough race, and his first race as an F1 driver. And a result of that as well was our driver of the day. So Mr. Ali Behrman, made it as driver of the day. And what made this most noteworthy is the people on social media. There were the polar opposites. There was the one end of the spectrum who said, "Ali, we love you. You're such a king. Killed it. Whatever." And then the polar opposite end of the spectrum who said, "Oh, he can't manage an F1. I would like to see y'all drive an F1 car." And to top it all off, Red Bull still won. Max won the Grand Prix. Yay! So, Red Bull domination still reigns supreme, but we're only two races in, so there's hope for the future. But shout out Ali Behrman for probably the race of his life. We'll see what happens. Do we all remember what happened last time a driver got appendicitis? We're going to hope that doesn't happen again. But here's to the rest of Silly Season, Part 2, and we'll see what happens for Mr. Behrman in the coming season. All right, well, that was it for my race day recap. Please check back in for our next one, and hope you enjoyed. It's been real. Peace out, ladies and gentlemen.